Welcome back to another episode of the Right Hand Drive Guys podcast, the podcast for guys who like right hand drives. As usual, I'm Bobby. This is Aaron.
Yo.
And we are back with episode 72. And I'm pretty pumped for episode 72. I've been waiting for this for quite a while.
Yeah.
Ever since we were going to have guests, we have been trying to have this guest on the podcast. Him being from Japan makes it a little harder to coordinate.
Right.
Usually we're shooting this at night. That's while he's sleeping. So we coordinated it. We're good. And finally we have on the podcast the homie ALBO.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm excited for this one, too.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
I think it's almost a year ago to the date
that we hung out with him
that
for
we
the
hung
first
out
time.
with him and hit the toge and all that.
Yeah. So
That's
we
pretty cool.
have, spent quite a bit of time with him throughout the Japan trips. Even when we didn't intend to, we saw him at the Tokyo Underground meet.
Right.
So that was pretty dope. So we're going to get right into this. We're going to get the lowdown on, kind of how he got into the position that he's in and what's next for him. You ready?
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. This is episode 72 with ALBO. Sweet. All right, and here we are with the homie ALBO. What's up, ALBO?
Hey guys, it is 1:08 a.m. and I am enjoying this nice seasonal Kirin beer and having some nuts
Wow.
while I talk to a couple car nuts.
This man is spoiled, right? Living the life out there in Japan. Yeah, I mean...
Hey, you guys are the ones with the sweet garage with the...
Hey.
all those cars.
That's because we get so much snow we have to have a garage. We can't street park them like you guys out there, huh?
Yeah, it's true.
Man, we definitely appreciate you being on here. This is something we've been looking forward to for quite a while. And we realized it's like a year to the day since we first got to spend time with you.
Really?
Yeah.
No way.
Yep. So 1 year ago, we were in Japan hitting the toges. You were giving us all of the inside info on how to enjoy ourselves there. So we appreciate that a year later.
Yeah, time flies.
It really does. So, I mean, we know you, and probably a lot of our listeners know, who you are, but we're hoping you could kind of give us a lowdown a little bit about yourself, what you drive, like what motivates you.
So I'm not sure where to start. I tend to go on these extended, super long diatribes. So maybe like one thing at a time. What should I get into first?
A little bit about yourself. So like really, how did you, because we know, but how did you end up in Japan?
So I think like many Westerners who end up living in Japan, I originally came as an English teacher fresh out of high school, not high school, university. And this was, my goodness, in 2010. So it would have been 14 years ago.
Wow.
And I basically came here, just about out of university. I was studying business, and at the time I was working at a bank, and I was gonna go on and find like a job in finance or something. But one day I remember looking down the hall and seeing my manager and kind of realizing that's literally my life path. Like I'm just gonna stay here in Toronto or in a small town, and just I'll be that overweight, balding middle manager at a bank. And I was like, well, maybe I can try something different. And so I decided to apply to something called the JET program, which is the Japan Exchange and Teaching Program. And it's probably the most, the most famous and the best English teaching program in Asia. Programs has been around since 1987, I believe. And I would say it's not even so much an English teaching program as it is a youth ambassador program where every year they bring in about 1,000 new participants and they kind of send them to the countryside all over Japan. And
Oh.
in 2010, I was lucky enough to be selected as one of those people. And they ended up sending me. I didn't choose, but they sent me to at the time little known prefecture called Gunma, which for fans of Initial D is actually where it's actually set.
Right.
And I didn't really know that going into it. I kind of had an inkling. I'd heard the place Gunma before, but I couldn't place it. And when I asked my senpai, who had done the program before, they were like, "Oh, Gunma, sorry, you're going to be going to the land of cabbage and strong wind and strong women. That's what Gunma's known for." Uh, so when I got there, I mean, it was just the most incredible experience. Just from the very first day that I was accepted, they prepped us for a couple months. They gave us some basic Japanese lessons for survival, and they basically just sent you on a plane, and you get to Tokyo. You're put up in this amazing hotel in Shinjuku with 1,000 other brand new jets. We called ourselves, or we were called jets, and we got like speeches from folks from like the government who were saying like, you guys are basically going to be internationalizing the Japanese communities where you're going to be sent. And so we really were sent to all those countryside towns and villages with the idea that we were tasked with this mission to internationalize. And I kind of went into it with um, that sense of mission, and then over time, I realized it was also part of the JET program's aim for me to be internationalized. And I found myself getting more and more and more fascinated by just the many layers of Japanese culture, which when you look at Japan from the outside, you're like, oh, that's so weird how they do things in Japan. It's so zany. But there's so many layers to it. And it's like you end up thinking, like, why are things like this? Why are things different? And the longer you're here, the more they make sense. And you want to be able to share more and more of that with the world because you're like, if I'm the only one who gets to experience this, like what a shame it is to not be able to share it with the rest of the world. So that's why I decided to start doing YouTube. I was making really just videos for my friends and my family about kind of inane, but to me, very interesting little aspects of Japan, like sliding doors and kotatsu, which are tables with heaters underneath, and things like drinking hot sake from a little wooden box, like all these strange little quirky things about Japan that I just fell in love with. But you know, even after just being there for several months, I started to realize that there was more to this place than cabbage. It was a haven for car culture, and I started realizing this when I would go to my schools that I was stationed at, and I would pass through these mountain roads, and I would notice that the guardrails were all banged up, and there would be skid marks going into those guardrails.
Nice.
And I'd be like, "Man, are people just really bad drivers here, or what?" And a couple days later, I would see they'd be fixed, and then after the weekend they'd be damaged again. So I'd be like, That's so weird." Yeah, I guess the roads are really slippery here or something because you would see skid marks like going all the way down like a straight road, right? And there
Nice.
would be like skid marks like S. Like I didn't really understand what was going on, and but there was like this one day it just kind of dawned on me. I was like, oh my god, that anime that I used to watch called Initial D, it might be set in this area, and it turns out it was exactly where I was living.
Nice.
Wow.
And when I discovered this, it just blew my mind because I was such a huge fan of this anime, and I was also always kind of like into cars because when I was growing up, I basically learned English from my dad's collection of road and track and motor trend magazines. Because I was living in Saudi Arabia at the time, which is a whole nother tangent. But um, I digress. When I was in high school, not to go all over the place too much, but when I was in high school, in that era, many of the people my age weren't really into JDM cars. There was this whole generation of like teenagers who were really, at least where I lived, who were really into 3 Series BMWs and C-Class Mercedeses
Mm.
and entry-level luxury cars. And it was what had happened was the the JDM tuner era had become like the Ricer era, and that had kind of become not popular anymore. It had gotten kind of like lame, at least where I was living in Toronto. And so even though I had always loved Gran Turismo and initially the anime, I didn't grow up, with tuner cars around me. I didn't grow up wanting to have like a Supra or an NSX. It didn't seem something feasible. It didn't seem to be realistic. But then here I found myself actually in Japan with the opportunity not just to see these cars driving by, but I would walk down the street and there would be a used car dealership with, I kid you not, a yellow RX-7 for $3,000, like a yellow FB.
Dang.
They're all like, looking back, I was like, that's too expensive. Am I
Yeah.
ever gonna make my money back? It's not gonna be worth it. This other friend of mine offered his R33 GTR for $6,000.
Oh my
No.
gosh.
It would have been less than that because it was six hundred thousand yen. So that would be like what, $5,000 at the time, 405.
Oof.
It was crazy. It was crazy back in the day. Like, um, and I'm sure everyone has seen like these old flyers and stuff from back in the day of how cheap these cars were. But to live it and have had access to those cars, and then to have chosen a Miata.
Right.
So
So,
that was my first foray into cars in Japan. I bought my next door neighbor's Miata and just started going around making videos of my life as an English teacher in Japan. And I think what really blew up was when I started making videos about the underground drifting culture of Gunma and made videos which showed there was like really a direct connection between the real life scene and Initial D and how they kind of influence each other. They're kind of like mirrors of each other. It's really, really interesting to be part of that. So that's kind of like my long-winded but as short as possible like backstory of what brought me here and why I'm still here.
okay. And so today, so you start with the Miata, of course. Respect. We all
Mm.
start somewhere, right? But today,
Yep.
2024, what is Albo driving?
So on the fleet, we got the S2000.
Of course.
We got the Spoon S2K, which you guys uh, when I was hanging out with you guys, I was driving around in. I also have a 2007 Forester STI,
Okay.
and let's see, there's my wife's car, which is a 2023 Toyota Sienta, so like a hybrid minivan thing.
The family
The
car.
daily,
Yeah.
the family car. It's
Nice.
it's pretty awesome, actually. It's probably the best car. I also recently picked up an FD2 Type R,
Oh, hell
Nice.
yeah.
Nice.
and that thing is absolutely dope. And I think mostly still unannounced, but slightly teased. But I'll just say here, I also picked up a 350Z for drifting.
Oh, wow. So
Nice.
so Albo's gonna dabble in the drift.
Yep.
Heck yeah.
That's cool.
I'm
That's
gonna
like a whole
try.
nother
I'm gonna try
thing,
at
right?
least. Yeah. I mean, I've always been really, really, uh, you know, interested in drifting, especially since that's what I first started to cover when I first got here. But I always thought, I don't have money for tires. What if I crash the car?
Yeah.
And so it took me a long time to just decide to send it, and here we are. You know.
Yeah, and I mean, when we were there with you on the toge, Aaron knows firsthand because he rode with you. But you clearly have plenty of experience driving. Period. Right? Like you've put in the seat time. So do you think that some of that toge driving will give you like an advantage when you start out with the 350Z?
Well, funny thing is, about a couple weeks ago, I actually took the Z to the location where Tokyo Drift was filmed here in Japan. There's this Toge area,
Yeah.
and we just went for a drive there, and it's very, very, very it's quite steep, and there's a lot of hairpin turns. And I was like, I wonder what would happen if I just gave it a bit of gas, just just a bit, just a bit in this hairpin turn. So I did, and the thing just slid so smoothly, so easily, and I countered it, and I realized I was born to do this. And basically, the Drift King. Um, no, it's. I think it's definitely going to be way harder to actually learn how to chain and to do like advanced techniques and maneuvers, but uh, there's there's definitely a lot of crossover with driving my S2000 just because they're both rear wheel drive,
Mhm.
and I've driven the S2000 like in a big skid pad in like a gymkhana type setting, and I've done like figure eights with it. Uh, Glad I didn't blow the diff or the transmission or anything, but I was like, okay, I kind of understand like what's going on, and I've also taken both the Forester STI and oh yeah, I also have another car, an NB Roadster, an NB Miata,
Oh, nice.
Nice.
and so we put snow tires on that, and we went drifting, or we go drifting in the winter in like this big parking
Oh,
lot.
yeah. That's a
Nice.
blast.
So that's super 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 fun. I hope some of that experience will cross over, but who knows?
Um, and so the last part of that question was, what motivates you? Like, what's that like, factor that just drives you? Because if you're looking from the outside, we've gotten to maybe spend a little bit more personal time, but somebody looking from the outside, like Albo for the most part is like, go, go, go. Like he is getting it. He's progressing. He's creating. And so what motivates you to continue that almost nonstop?
I think from the outside looking in, especially if you see, on Instagram or on YouTube, it definitely is possible to get that impression that I'm just always like go 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 go, pedal to the metal, never stopping. But that's not the case at all. I think I definitely struggle with motivation, probably more than like a lot of people, especially a lot of people who are very very driven. I'm kind of like lazy driven, where I have like this ambition, but sometimes I just lack the the willpower to overcome like this crushing laziness. And so like days will like pass by, and of course, on top of that, I'm a new father, and
Congrats,
that's
by the way.
been
Oh yeah.
thank you. That's been an amazing journey in and of itself. But I didn't realize how much it takes out of you both physically and just like emotionally and just time wise. So it's been very, very difficult actually to push things along. Uh, but I think what drives me and what keeps me going is when I have the chance to meet folks like you guys actually uh, when I do the JDM experience.
Yeah.
And a lot of those folks are long time fans of the channel, and they let me know like the channel is one of their only um like portals into seeing what life is like here in Japan
Yes.
through the lens of a car guy. And that's what I kind of lean on whenever I feel, you know, demotivated or exhausted or feeling like, I start getting too attached to thinking about like metrics and numbers and view counts and things like that.
Yeah.
I remember it's like John or Kyle or Nancy, and I had a chance to meet them like at Daikoku or on the cheating experience, and they just let me know that if it wasn't for the videos that they watched, like they wouldn't be there, or they wouldn't have gone down this life path that is kind of uh, is in line with their passions and what they want to do. And so that gives me a sense of purpose. And I think I feel really blessed to have been able to be in a position where like what I love to do is also something that, like, if there's like a Venn diagram, like what I love to do and what actually impacts a lot of people and makes a living, like the center of that Venn diagram. I think that's when you're in that center, that's a sign of like, there's a word for it actually. It's called ikigai, and
Yeah.
Ikigai.
that ikigai, and that roughly translates to like a reason for living, your purpose.
Uh, yeah, and I think
So I'm like,
a lot of people like are striving to get into the middle of that Venn diagram, right? From all walks of life. And the fact that, whether you're in it all the time, you personally, or, there's only a percentage of the time that you really feel it, just the opportunity to truly feel that, like you're following the passion and you're impacting people. That's like pretty huge, especially at your age, at our age, to be able to have reached that already. That's really a sign of big things to come, I feel like.
I hope so. I mean, it's definitely motivating, but I try not to think too hard about like this big goal of like millions of subscribers and just being like the super baller. I just try to look like a couple days at a time, or like just try to stay focused on like the next thing, but also keeping an eye on like a big picture. I kind of have like this formula where it's basically the way I try to live my life, which is to try to pursue excitement in as many moments as I can, and just let that excitement lead me to like the next thing, to like the next thing. And whenever I'm faced with like one of several options, even if it's not directly aligned with like this big vision I have for myself of being like this superstar 10 million subscriber YouTuber. Uh, and which I'll get into in a second about why that vision is kind of like a specter. Uh, I really just try to stay um, excited in as many moments as possible, because I feel like you might have this image of what you want your life to be. Like let's say in the example of becoming like a 10 million subscriber YouTuber, right? Just as an example. At the moment you decided you wanted to have that giant goal, as the moments change, you're kind of still hanging on to that. At least in my opinion, you're still hanging on to that dream that like a previous version of yourself had. But you might have already changed into like a different person from the person 6 months ago who had that original idea. So I feel like if you keep hanging on to that original conception of like what your ultimate reality is, then you end up somehow you can end up shortchanging yourself, because you might then start to make decisions that are more in line with the previous version of yourself's dream than like your current self, which I think it changes like moment by moment by moment. So I just try to have this idea, this picture of like what I want my life to look like in like several years, like 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and really focus on that. Like when I meditate, I'll really focus on that for like 10 or 15 minutes and get really excited about it and like just let it go and just trust the process of like following like the next most exciting thing. And what I noticed is like when I look back on my life, a lot of those things somehow manifested themselves at some point along my journey. And I've I've done this for long enough and noticed like synchronicities so often throughout like the past 10 years that I think there's something to this like personal philosophy I have. And that's why I continue to follow this basically this philosophy of just continuing to follow my excitement.
Yeah, I like that. I like how it's kind of like, you have a dream, but if you don't let the dream evolve with your personal evolution, then sometimes the dream can actually hold you back because you haven't allowed it.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. Okay, cool.
Right.
No, I agree
Mhm.
too, because it's easy to get stuck on something like that and then you miss another opportunity because you're not allowing it to kind of progress.
Yeah,
So
that's exactly.
I know Aaron had a question for you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, everyone's dream, or not everyone's, but a lot of people's dreams that are, into the JDM cars, they want to move to Japan. They want to live there. They'll get a taste of it, dude, and they just immediately want to hop ship and get straight to Japan
Oh
and
yeah.
just become a full-fledged citizen.
Yeah.
It happened to us whenever we got back.
You're immediately Googling how to immigrate to Japan, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So, what were some of your biggest challenges integrating into the Japanese culture?
Um. When this is a really hard question to answer because like everything has just been really fun like the entire time.
Right.
And I think that's a function of my personality where I tend to see life as like this RPG where everything is like this challenge or this quest or this uh, new thing I can level up in. If I have to choose the most challenging thing, it would definitely be the language. And that was like a straight up grind sometimes, like literally sitting there writing the same kanji for pages and pages and pages, like
Dang.
thousands of hours of work. Um, and I did it quite hardcore for like a long time until I started discovering like better methods, uh, such as things that like methods that broke down the kanji into component pieces so you could form mnemonics. And then I got good at making, you know, memory devices that help me remember more and more kanji and words and grammatical structures. And then I also got creative with learning. I got creative with using social situations to practice. So, for example, I would bring my textbook to the bar, and then I would study at the bar until I had either gathered courage to try to use a grammar point on somebody uh, around me, or until somebody would just talk to me and be like, "Are you studying at a bar?" And it was highly successful. I mean,
That's cool.
I started doing it at like bars and like clubs and like just like everywhere and just using it basically like as a prop. Like I would literally be like, imagine this textbook says like Japanese 101, right? I would be like this at like at a club and like dancing, right? And I'd be like, sumimasen, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're like, and yeah, people found it like hilarious and like really interesting and funny. And so I made like a lot of friends that way. And this is when I realized like life is just a big game, and you can just enjoy social situations like however you want, as long as you're not, you know, being an ass to people around you.
Yeah.
You know, if you can make an ass of yourself, and that's often like really really fun and funny in retrospect, but it's really powerful when you're trying to learn Japanese. So to answer your question of how somebody can move to Japan and live a life here, the biggest hurdle that most people will face is uh, Japanese ability. You can kind of get around that if you just live in central Tokyo and you live in this bubble that is thick enough and where all your friends are just either English speaking Japanese people or just foreigners. But that's kind of weird. That would be like buying like a cake and only eating the icing. So it's really really important to learn Japanese, and it's daunting because there's so much to learn, but it's also easier than you think. Is this what I want to tell people? It's easier than you think if you apply strategies that other people have developed. So I was never very good at learning languages. They tried to teach us French here in Canada when we were growing up, and I swear I know like four phrases. That's it. And so I was really terrified of coming to Japan, and I thought maybe I'll just survive with several phrases and stay there for a year and come home and um, maybe learn a little bit of survival Japanese. But I got to like a pretty high level just by being consistent and actually taking it seriously and studying. And I think what I took from it is that if I could do it, anybody can do it. So yeah, hopefully that motivates somebody to actually like study. Um, I think you need to actually study from like a textbook, and you also need to study by having somebody you can speak with. And after that, watch a lot of anime and Japanese dramas and maybe some Japanese pornos. That helps too.
Help something.
Surprisingly useful. Oh, it's actually very powerful.
um,
Uh, yep.
so, um, a question I really had, man, was, obviously you're in Japan. Your first car was a Miata, and everybody who knows ALBO knows that iconic Spoon S2000. If yeah, it's an awesome car, but you had kind of access to all of the JDM legends, right? In a sense, you could have chosen anything, and you chose the S2000. It was there meaning or basis behind that, or was it just the opportunity at hand?
I think um, I was definitely influenced by driving the S2000 in Gran Turismo. I think Gran Turismo 2, and I just thought the design was very very beautiful, even just from way back then. And when I came to Japan, I bought the Miata as my first car because it was cheap. It was basically $1,500, and my next door neighbor just tossed me the keys and was like, "Just bring it back whenever, and if you want to buy it, it's yours." And she told me I could just drive it around, test it. And actually, before I bought the car, I was thinking about buying a GC8 WXSCI,
Yep.
and I was set to kind of travel by bullet train across the country to go buy one like the next day. But Mizuki, her name was Mizuki, she tossed me the keys and she was like, "Well, just try it out." At the time, I thought, "Man, Miatas are so gay," because for some bizarre reason, at that time period, Miatas were known as hairdresser cars. Like whatever that means, it doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
The car that hairdressers drive, and I mean, I thought it was a really really cool car. In fact, in Japan, they're called roadsters, and that's a much more badass name.
Right.
And people would put like these fat tires on them with like Watanabes with like really wide wheels,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they look really dope in Japan. But even some of my friends in the car community here, a bunch of foreigners, also English teachers, they had like S14s. Was one other guy had like an Evo 3. Somebody else had like another S14, like an MR2. And compared to those cars, like the Miata was like really low on the totem pole. Um, but I just love the car. Like I didn't care what anybody else thought. I absolutely loved the car and how fun it was to drive. And I saw the S2000 as kind of being the much cooler but not attainable version of the Roadster for somebody on a very meager English teacher in Japan salary. So I was like, oh, okay, that's a dream. That's a dream. Just because I love driving with the top down. And so when I finally had the opportunity to buy the S2000, really partially as a result of my second Roadster being totaled, I was driving down the road and grandma hit me, just T-boned my car.
Dang.
Um, it was terrible. It was so sad. What happened was a month before that, I had actually spun out at Ebisu Circuit, and I had tapped the rear fender on the wall, and so I was crushed. But then I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna put over fenders. We're gonna really build out this
Yeah,
this roadster. It's
opportunity.
gonna be sick. Yeah, but then it was T-boned, and so that car was just gone. But the insurance payout was really, really like a big fat insurance payout because I
Nice.
wasn't deemed to be at fault. And in addition to like the amount of money I had saved up, it was strangely exactly the amount of money that an S2000, which my friend Masa had shown me like a listing for. As soon as it popped up, he sent me the listing. I was like, "Holy shit!" Like I have like to the yen. That's how much money I have.
Nice. Meant to be.
So that's right. That's right. Like we were. I was telling Masa, I was like, "Dude, I literally have just enough money to buy this car." Like literally, and I was like, "We'll just eat ramen for the rest of the the rest of the month." Like at this time, I had a pretty good job in Tokyo, but we were just done moving to like a new place. So I was like, I didn't really have very much money like saved up. So I was just like, let me just use up the rest of my money on this car. And because it was so uh it felt so in many ways it felt very was synchronistic. Like the exact amount of money that I needed was how much it cost, and like the exact date that I bought it, or that I decided to buy it, and when I actually bought it were like all multiples of two.
Whoa.
Uh, yeah, like I remember I made, and I'll show you guys later, but I made this post on Instagram on February 20, and I made this post. I was like, I'm gonna buy an S2000 this year, just randomly. It just popped into my head. It's more like I just saw it would happen in the future. And I was like, February 20, at 8:20. So it's 2020
Yeah.
on 2020. Like the year is 2020. So there are all these weird, weird numbers. Uh, and yeah, I basically just saw the future like 2 months later, and I bought the car exactly 2 months later. And that's why I really felt like that car was meant to be. Um, yeah, it's been an amazing car. It's really, really, really fun to drive. It's very, very uh, tricky to learn how to drive well, but it's extremely rewarding when you understand how it moves and when you can throw it around and bend it to your will.
And so when you got it, was it all stock or did it have some of the mods on it?
It had a few mods. It actually had had a roll bar. It had the ZE40s, which I later changed, but it had a nice set of ZE40s. It had the OEM, but optional aero parts, the lip and the spats. It had the ducktail as well. Wait, no, it didn't have the ducktail. Um, it had an LSD, which I actually took out and replaced with the stock Torsen because either something was a bit weird with it, or I just really wasn't used to the movement of like a two-way LSD. and it was too aggressive for me. So took that out, replaced it with the spoon, uh, or just the stock Torsen LSD. Spoon gave it to me, and since then, yeah, just been slowly building it out to the kind of one of a kind look that it's got now.
Yeah, for sure. It's an ALBO car, so to speak. Like, when you see it, there's really no mistaking it for anyone else's car. I love what you've done with
You know
it.
what it is?
Yeah.
It's the spoon bumper. It's just so striking.
Yeah, it
You
is.
know, it's got such a weird look to it that it's kind of like love it or hate it depending on how
Hmm.
it's modded and who you are really. So I think it definitely requires a lot of like courage on the part of an S2000 owner to go with that bumper because there's a lot of more conservative choices
Yeah.
like the Voltex bumper, which
Hmm.
is what everybody chooses, is basically like the AP3 bumper for
Yeah.
S2000
Right, right.
owners.
Yeah, I
The
personally think the spoon bumper is the look, like those fog lights and just the way that they designed that. It is like maybe a little more aggressive for an S2000, but yeah, I think that's for sure the look.
Mhm.
Aaron, I know
Yeah,
you
thank
had
you.
another question.
Yeah, yeah. So speaking of the S2000, I had the pleasure of riding shotgun as we, ripped around Hakone. What is your favorite toge to hit in your S2000?
I there's so many good ones. Probably probably the one we drove
Mm.
in Hakone. It's called Ashinoko Skyline, and it's kind of like it's this really cool road along the side of the mountain that is neither too much of uh, a descent or an ascent. It's kind of like runs kind of parallel to the mountain with some dips here and there, so you can really really ring out the car. It was a blast to drive there, wasn't it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's where they have the helicopter, right? Like in that area.
Yes, that's right.
Because
Yep,
I picked
yep.
up a sticker that said the skyline on it, so I remembered that for sure.
Oh,
And we got
In the
that
spot with the milk ice
the
cream,
milk ice
D.
cream. I was
Yeah.
about to say that.
yep, yep.
Yeah, we're standing there, and we're like, oh, surely Albo's gonna order for us, and so we're standing there awkwardly, and then Albo's like, no, no, boys, you're ordering yourself this time, like and so I'll never forget that, trying to order the ice cream in Japanese for the first time. That was an awesome experience for us.
Oh yeah. That was cool.
And so speaking, of the Albo experience, I've spent
Yeah,
the Albo experience, man. It really is. And you laugh, man, but these 2 8-hour days that I spent with you are by far some of the most memorable full days that I've had in Japan, because you really, I feel like personally, you really understand the person who's coming to spend time with you for the most part, and you truly do cater to them. And it's something I do look forward to every time I start booking my trip to Japan. And one thing
thank
that
you.
I was really hoping we could do real quick was, I know the benefits, right? But I kind of wanted to fill in the listener on, what you can kind of expect during one of your experiences.
The ALBO experience.
Yeah, hell yeah, man.
um, well, like the basic gist of it is it's like a day hanging out with myself, visiting many of the places that you've seen in my videos. Uh, at this point, I've developed a whole list of different itineraries and plans, which are based on the places that people have wanted to go in the past, like Type 1, Spoon, Max Ferrito's Garage, 8-Pit Autobox, uh, Omoshiro, not Omoshiro, Omoren, no, sorry, not Omoren, what I'm talking about, Omori Factory, uh, and also Toge, and of course, like Daikoku and Umihotaru, Tatsumi, the parking areas. Uh, and at this point, maybe a third of the experiences that I run are kind of like these bespoke plans, which are combinations of all the things that people really want to experience. Like I remember second time when we went, we actually went to a forest experience, right? Like we did like this treetop adventure
Oh
because your
yeah.
daughter came with us,
Yeah, and that was
and we
really
wanted to do
like
something.
a great thing, that I want to throw out there real quick was that I'm like, hey, my daughter's gonna be with me. You're like, hey, I got it. And you turned something that, the first time with me and Aaron was like a guy's thing. You turned almost into, a family friendly thing that didn't make it boring for my daughter. It really kind of gave her a look at a different side of Japan, which I super appreciated. But yeah, no, I'll never forget us rolling down those zip lines and not knowing how to land, and just like it was just one of those lighthearted, funny times that I really wouldn't have had if I hadn't have had that day with you. So I definitely appreciated how you were able to pivot and make it something that, yeah, my 10-year-old daughter could have just as much fun as me being a 38-year-old man.
I think it's of course I've had the opportunity to experience all these different things, like just with me and my friends or my family, or also with other folks who have wanted to do things that are like not just car stuff. Like oftentimes, guys will bring their wives or their girlfriends, and they're not, car people, but they really are interested in seeing Japan through various lenses, and car culture becomes one of those lenses. But we can also go do stuff like very traditional things like tea ceremony, or wearing kimonos, or walking through temples. And I really like the times when folks choose to incorporate some of those more traditional experiences into their plan, because it it creates kind of like this really interesting juxtaposition between the traditional culture of Japan and the underground car scene. And then the most interesting thing is like there's so many parallels between those worlds. And when I get folks like the girlfriends and the wives being like, it's so interesting how like they make the observation themselves. They're like, it's so interesting how like the Japanese car enthusiasts are so similar to the monks who work at the temples. And then they explain, they have the same kind of passion and the same kind of passion for a single task, the same kind of dedication to perfection. And I'm like, yes, 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 that's it. You get it, you get it, you get it. Like, I'm so happy that they're able to make the connection themselves, and then also seeing them uh, kind of struggle a bit when I force them into conversations, like at first with you guys.
Mm-hmm.
But then later on, when they're like, "Oh, I'm so glad you pushed me into that because I would not have gotten into that conversation if it wasn't for you." Like, I just feel lucky I'm able to facilitate these experiences. I'm just somebody who has had like cool experiences, and I want to be able to share like those same experiences with other people, and just remove a lot of the anxiety and stress that comes with trying to even get into that situation in the first place. Because as you guys know, um, like driving alone in Japan can be really daunting. Like streets are narrow, GPS barely works, and you might even get to like the like ETC gates, and you have to pay cash, and then,
Freeze,
but
yeah.
they talk to you in Japanese. So
Yeah.
there's all these factors that for some folks, um, it's quite daunting. So I'm glad I get the opportunity to help those people out too.
And it seems
Yeah,
like
I just try to think about it as a sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and it seems like maybe when you were talking about the motivation, like you maybe pull from some of these experiences for that motivation that you were talking about, because I can only imagine, you get to see people kind of really accept Japan. Like when you took us to the temple, that was for sure another experience I'll never forget, because we had gone to a few temples prior, but we didn't fully understand what was going on. We didn't understand the
Right.
offering. We didn't understand why you're not walking down the middle. We really didn't understand these things. And just with your guidance, like really understanding the culture gave us a way more broad outlook to what this actually means to the Japanese people.
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed like those little nerdy things that we can geek out about.
Yeah.
But I feel like those little things are really what you remember, right? It's like
Oh yeah.
don't walk through the middle, like walk on the sides. Why?
Mm-hmm.
What's the point of that? That's because that's the path of the gods. And it's like, whoa, that almost makes the hair on the back of your neck stand, right? It's like that's so
Seriously.
interesting.
Yes, it really was. And so speaking of experiences, I know you had one about experience.
Yeah. What has been the best experience you've had in Japan in these past 14 years?
I know that's a big question.
Big question.
Um, hmm, hmm, hmm.
I know it's hard to pick one.
It's a
Oh
stumper.
man, yeah, that's a real stumper. Uh, okay, I would say the moment that was the most pivotal was when I first went out at night into like the toge and stumbled upon the local drifters. So
Uh,
I went down uh this road which I didn't know, and it was kind of like a back way up one of the initial D toges. And in the distance, the far distance, I could hear like screeching of tires, and the sound of like exhaust just reverberating across the entire valley as you got closer and closer. And so I knew I was getting closer, and the whole thing just it felt like such a movie because I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe I'm driving my cute little roadster up these winding roads, and it sounded like there were dragons in the distance. And I was like driving towards them, and as I went further and further up, more and more guardrails would be messed up. There would be more and more marks on the side on skid marks on the road, until I got to this point where there was like 2 dozen cars lined up on the road, pop, 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 pop. And they were all like Sylvias, you know, um, other Roadsters, MR2s, Supras, Evos, like Skylines, Imprezas, every single JDM car
all
basically.
of
So
them.
it was a gallery. Yeah. And the gallery just went down it went all the way like around uh, a couple turns, like on the road actually. So I had to park at the very, very end. And I was walking like 10 minutes up
Oh my
the
god.
road, just trying to get to where everyone else was. And I was like, what am I doing? Like I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anything. But it was just I just walked up that path. And finally I saw the some of the folks were like in the distance in the corner, and they were all watching. And I didn't even know this was where people were drifting. I thought it was like racing, right? And I remember coming up upon a hairpin turn, and on the turn, I'll show you guys. There's like this convex mirror or
Yeah.
concave mirror that lets you see on the other side of the turn. And I remember I was nearing the hairpin, and suddenly there was like a blinding light that blinded me because the headlights were directly at the right angle to hit the mirror and hit my eyes. So I kind of like went like this, kind of like just grimaced. And then suddenly the lights disappeared. And so what had happened was, you know, the car was driving towards the mirror and it initiated a drift and it was completely sideways. So the lights disappeared. And then I just happened to be like right at the apex of the uh, turn, and this S14 Sylvia comes right around, and this moment is just like blazing into my mind because the hood of his car was about an arm's length away from me. It was so close because I was kind of like I shouldn't have been like so far on the side of the hairpin, right? But I was kind of like, just beside the yellow line or the white line that divided the road. And he comes around, the whole moment goes into slow motion, and I had my camera running.
Oh wow.
And it filmed that moment as he passed by, and I could basically touch the hood of the car, and like we locked eyes. And and then he kept going. And I was like, that is 100% the coolest moment of my life. Uh,
Man, I could only
and that kind
imagine.
of was really what opened my eyes. Yeah, I mean, it opened my eyes to the whole thing. Um, and I thought, this is so cool that I need to share this. And that night, I tracked down the guy. I showed him the clip I shot. I He was like, "This is super cool. Hang out with us, get a few more clips." And so I cut that into a video, and it blew up. And that's kind of like what put me down this path. So I
Wow.
can trace it all back to that moment.
That's
Nice.
crazy. A maniac in an S14 whipping around the toge, and that like was a pivotal point. I can't imagine. Seriously.
Yeah.
So I know you've told us like so many times. You probably told us like 12 times. Can you remind us of the word that the Japanese use that describes their pride for their builds?
Uh
It's like that pride that they have that like
Or
doesn't
to do things correctly.
oh yeah, to do things correctly. Like not half-ass them.
like chanto suru.
Yes, 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 that was it. One more time for us.
Yeah, that means like chanto,
Chanto?
like to like, and then suru, to do. So
Okay.
like to do something properly.
Okay.
And yeah, it's basically the idea like you don't half-ass things.
Yep.
And yeah, basically in Japan, people don't half-ass things the way that foreigners do, that Westerners do.
Yeah, it's cool, man. We get it, dude.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm not gonna say like what I'm just saying is that like our natural state is half-assed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's because it's a serious challenge to do things correct the first time every time, and sometimes you'll catch foreigners, yeah, maybe just not going through that whole process, right? So
Yeah. We cut corners here and there, it's just like, like we have this idea, like if it's good enough, it's good enough. But like that is not the standard here with people, just because like I think it gets ingrained from school because, uh, and not just like the normal, uh, like classroom subjects, but the after school club activities like tennis or baseball or basketball or kendo
mhm.
or judo. The standard is not squeaking by. The standard is being at the same level as everybody else. Like you cannot be the weakest link in the chain. And so the expectation that people just have mentally is like, I cannot suck. And I think that's something that's really, really cool.
Um, and so, all right, man, we got one more question for you. And since we first got to hang out with you, you've gone full-time YouTube, you've had a child, you've added to the fleet. We've been following closely. We've been absolutely rooting you on, man, 100%. But what we need to know is what is next for ALBO?
I I think the future is very, very exciting. And what I definitely see is kind of like an expansion of more of the things that I'm currently doing, like more YouTube videos. But also, I really love being able to share, you know, the culture and my experiences and traditional stuff as well with the JDM experiences. So I think there's a way to make that uh, to grow that and share it like with more and more people. I kind of have this vision of there being like a place like Oido's garage,
Mm.
like, and it's like my garage where there's a bunch of cars that my project cars, but also like a bunch of cars that people can drive, and
Oh.
maybe I'll show them around like I am now, or there might be some of my uh, people who I'm working with who are maybe Japanese who speak good English, and then they will be kind of like my lieutenants, and they'll
Mm.
conduct a lot of the experiences as well. And and I also see, hopefully, see myself doing some stuff creatively that are like even nonfiction. So I would love to do both produce. Like I'm trying to get into the whole conversation with the Initial D movie that Sun Kang is directing.
Ooh.
Like
Oh,
fingers crossed.
nice.
Who
Yeah.
knows if something like that. Uh, I would also, even just like short films on the YouTube channel and just growing that. And I think what's really, really cool and is going to be a big boon is for some reason, just out of pure luck, I happened to move to this area where they are making this massive theme park the size
Oh.
of Disneyland.
Wow.
And yeah, they after I moved here, they basically decided in my neighborhood that they're going to animate Disneyland. Like that's the only way I can describe it.
Oh, wow.
It's a theme park the size of Disneyland, which is Japan's anime culture based. So I think there's going to be a massive influx of tourism in this area, and hopefully I'll be able to expand my business to be able to cater to a lot of those folks.
Wow.
And I think
Yeah.
that'll really be like the JDM experience.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah,
great.
my hope is I'll have a garage like you guys. That's kind of like
Yeah,
the
we
big
hope to
dream.
see it, man. We hope to see that for sure. And hey, if I know you're in Toronto, but if you're ever around, man, you're always welcome inside here. I'll tell you that right now. And hey, maybe you'll get to test drive an FL5 before you get yours. I know you're still waiting on that thing.
Oh my God, this took so long.
Don't remind
It
him,
took so
dude.
long. I bought another FL5.
That's
No, no,
awesome,
not
man.
another FL5, another Type R, right?
Yeah, which we
Yeah.
were just doing an episode on the Civic Type R's, and it was funny you said you got the FD2 because it was pretty much like the FL5, the EK9, and then the FD2. Those three were like the only ones that we were really
Yeah.
willing to, even really address. The other ones didn't quite make the cut. So I'd say
Right.
I'd say you got the right idea with that, huh?
Yeah, I mean honestly the FD2 is so good. It's making me reconsider, like not completely reconsider, but like think about, do I need like the FL5? Like it's so good.
It's like that
Um
middle child that kind of
yeah.
has the best of both the raw of the EK9 and some of the tech of the FL5. I feel like that's probably a really
Yes.
good car.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. That's exactly what it is. And it's very special in its own way because it's the last NA Type R.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And after those they were all turbocharged, right? So
Yep.
uh it's at least here in Japan, it occupies like a very special place in many people's hearts.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be really hard to let it go. And if I do end up letting it go, and yeah, I just want to keep all the cars because you know sometimes you want to drive the FL5 in a turbo. Sometimes you just want that raw
Yeah.
NA feeling with them. with it's got a Zero Fighter exhaust, so it sounds like a Kanjo Zoku Civic.
Oh,
It's
nice.
Yes.
so loud. Yeah,
And
I can't wait for you guys to check it out when you're here next time.
absolutely. And we saw you just threw the Champs window banner on there. I'm wondering when we're going to see those for sale.
Yeah, hopefully soon. I'm trying to find a place that can print them at a decent price.
Mhm.
Because a lot of places that print banners, it's like they're too expensive
Yeah.
to really make any money off of, like after shipping and everything.
Mhm.
So got to try to find like a good supplier. Uh, yeah, stickers are easy, but banners are surprisingly expensive. So
I could see
yeah,
that.
hopefully soon.
We'll be following along and paying attention, man. We definitely appreciate you carving out some time, even if it was at 1 a.m. for us. This was something we really wanted to check off our list, and this was an awesome episode, and I think everybody's going to love it.
Yeah, definitely a good talk.
Absolutely, man.
Thank
So,
you.
again, if you want to just, I know most people know, but if you want to just let everybody know where to find you in case they have been living under a rock for the past 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, just search me on YouTube or Instagram, ALBO or albo.media, ALBO.media, and my stuff should pop up.
Hell yeah, man. And we'll be seeing you the next time we come to Japan. You best believe that.
Can't wait.
Awesome, man. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. See you guys next time.
Damn, an hour with ALBO.
Dude, could have been gone for a lot longer, I feel, too.
Yeah, it could have, because I could talk to that guy all night. I mean, what I really find about him, and I'm not just trying to fluff him up because he was just on this. I felt this way since the day that we met him. Like, this dude is genuine.
Yeah.
Like, there's no fake nothing about this guy. Like, he really is genuine, and what you see is what you get.
Right.
And yeah, I friggin' love that dude. I mean, we hung out with him it was supposed to be 8 hours, but it was literally like 14.
Yeah.
And he's like, let's go here.
It was
Let's
all
do
day
this.
and some change.
Yeah, it really was. And we end up on the C1 loop at like 1 or 2 a.m. just like ripping. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I really felt like I enjoyed that interview, beyond just, learning about him, like just really seeing like what it is behind the scenes, you know what I mean? And really hearing about what motivates him and whatnot. And yeah, just to hear that he started with a Miata.
Yeah.
And I
Humble
think no
beginnings,
different about him, It's just that like you wouldn't have necessarily thought that. But yeah, again, we all start somewhere, and that's really the beauty of having a man like this on there that has found success is to hear that backstory and realize like, oh, okay, like, we do all start somewhere, even these guys that maybe have ended up somewhere a little bit higher on the scale.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So definitely make sure that you hit up ALBO on the socials. Of course, you know us at RHDGUIS. Hit up the merch, rhdguis.com. And yeah, tell your friends. Send this thing to your friends. Like, let them know, hey, the Right Hand Drive guys are throwing it down and representing for us.
Oh, yeah.
Hell yeah. So for episode 72, An Hour with ALBO, I'm Bobby. This is Aaron.
See ya.
Peace.